Okay, well, just a reminder all that we are now streaming live on Facebook and recording. So welcome everyone near and far. For anyone who doesn't know, I am Meagan Marshall and I'm the director of the Hugh C. Hyde Living Writers series. And I'm particularly excited because tonight gives us the chance to celebrate the work of an SDSU beloved, and it's going to get us ramped up or maybe feeling some type of way about next week's pivotal election. But before I welcome our featured reader to begin, I do want to thank those who have helped to support the series and who have helped to make this event and this semester possible. And that of course includes our friends at Love Library, Markle Tumlin, wearing a fabulous hat and co-hosting with me this evening. Always good to see you, Markle. I also want to thank Danya Muka-Hall, Laurel Bliss, and Rebecca Williamson. And of course, I need to thank the Department of English and Comparative Literature and the MFA program in creative writing for their continued support of the series. So just a couple reminders. If you're joining us via Zoom, please keep your mic muted at least during the presentation. And then once we segue to our Q&A portion, you can feel free to unmute yourself and to ask a question at that point. You can also ask questions and make comments in the chat, during the reading. Feel free to react to what you're hearing and we can react to each other. And then also, again, just a reminder, if you just joined us right now, we are recording. So without further ado, I am so excited to welcome our featured author, who is a cornerstone of the MFA program in creative writing. Stephen Paul Martin has published over 20 books of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. One of his short story collections, The Gothic Twilight, was nominated for the National Book Critics Circle Fiction Award in 1993. His most recent full collection of fiction is The Ace of Lightning, which came out in 2017. And I will just make a note that it is my personal favorite for a few reasons. One being, please see the musical group Assassination Sandwich. Yes. The prolific line, he wonders how much of what people call historical knowledge is really kitsch entertainment. And then also get schooled on the art of the 1,000-word sentence, because it's a thing and they're all grammatically correct. Stephen Paul is also the author of Changing the Subject, The Possibility of Music, and Instead of Confusion. From 1980 to 1996, he co-edited Central Park, an internationally acclaimed journal of the arts and social commentary. His writings have appeared in over 200 periodicals over the past 30 years and in several different languages. He has been described as a masterful postmodern storyteller whose characters' meditations often blend together with his narrator's essay-like ruminations in unexpected, comic, recursive, explosive, and subtle ways. He directs the MFA program each spring and has edited SDSU's literary journal, Fiction International. We are eternally grateful for all the work he's done and continues to do for our program, and most importantly, for our students, many of you who are here this evening. He is the most gracious and supportive mentor, and anybody who has worked with him would definitely echo this sentiment. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Stephen Paul Martin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks you all for coming. Like Megan said, the story you're going to hear tonight, I specifically asked Megan to let me read right before the election. And I think after you've heard the story, you'll understand why I wanted that particular time. The story you're going to hear tonight is an example of my interest in rewriting history, both ancient and contemporary history. The story tonight is set in 2018, so you don't want to expect any references to the COVID virus. That's one thing I want to make clear. In the other stories in this collection, which are set in 2019 and 2020, of course, the stories in 2020, COVID is a really important subject, as well as the election. The collection will be called 2020, which is a reference to our year right now, but also to 2020 vision, normal vision. assuming there is any such thing. So without further ado, let me read you the story here. First of all, I'm a little bit awkward with Zoom. Can everybody still see me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can, yeah, at least I can. And everybody, we're good? Look, thumbs up. Yes, all right. You're all
Okay. Very good, thank you. So this story is called The Phantom Zone. We went online to get the weather, but by mistake, we clicked on our YouTube account and got footage of children in detention centers on the Rio Grande. They'd been separated from their parents, stuck in unsanitary conditions, forced to sleep in standing room only cells on filthy concrete floors, lights on 24 hours a day, no access to showers, soap, toothpaste, or bathroom facilities, plagued by outbreaks of flu, lice, scabies, chickenpox. We saw hundreds of desperate faces pressed against rusty chain link fences, banging on bars of cells, or pressing handwritten notes against dirty windows, begging for help. We'd been hating the president since he first took office in 2016, when he quickly became the most dangerous man in the world, launching one destructive policy after another. But the cruelty of this latest border procedure was beyond everything. We knew something had to be done. We had to get rid of him. We didn't have the guts to do it ourselves. We felt we had too much to lose, too much comfort and convenience, too much everyday pleasure, not enough personal desperation. We didn't want the electric chair or Guantanamo. So we came up with a compromise plan, a way to interfere without facing excessive punishment. Of course, it would be insufficient. It would leave the president in charge of the world's most dangerous nation, but it was better than nothing. Now we're at his latest political rally, ready for action. I'm going to stand up in the middle of the president's speech and shout insults at him, targeting his worst abuses of power. Amy will be off to the side, filming it with her phone. She'll post it on YouTube where it's certain to go viral. I planned on getting an aisle seat so that after I finish my verbal assault, I could duck out and hide in the bathroom, slip out through the window undetected. But we got there late and the only seat I could find was right in the middle, 10 rows back from the stage. So now I'm stuck, no easy way out, surrounded by people eager to support the worst president in US history. The guy on my right has a shirt with a coiled snake that says, "Don't tread on me." I can tell by his red MAGA baseball hat, his bellicose facial expression that he owns guns and a pit bull, drives an F-250, to kill animals that can't fight back and mount their heads in his family room, never lets people finish their sentences, and thinks that watching Fox News makes him an expert on everything. I know he'll be cheering when the president talks about how great his term in office has been. In fact, he's probably been to other presidential rallies and already knows what the president's going to say. The president won't really say anything, but people with like this guy won't care. In fact, they won't even know that the president's just making noise. It won't occur to them that he's supposed to do anything else. It won't occur to the president that he's supposed to do anything else. After all, he got elected making noise a few years ago. Why should he change what worked? The room itself, normally a high school auditorium, is filled with folding plastic chairs in front of a slightly elevated stage. 8 big screen TV monitors have been installed and college football games fill the room. I assume that once the president begins, the games will disappear and the TVs will start broadcasting his speech, as if we can't fully take in what he's saying without simultaneous picture tube versions of it. Or maybe the games will remain, as if to say that the United States is a football team competing to be number 1. The lights flick off and on. Football games disappear, replaced by a shot of the podium and American flags on both sides of it. I'm not sure why they need 2 flags. I'm not sure why they need even 1. I must have a disturbed look on my face because the woman on my left nudges me and asks me why I bothered to show up if I hate the president so much. Hate? I say. It's obvious. Her form-fitting white uniform makes her look like she might be a nurse in a pornographic movie. She's got a sky blue name tag that says Randy. Don't you hate him too, Randy? Not as much as you do. Why not? I've been trying to give him a chance, been working to convince myself that I should feel sorry for him because he's trying to do a job he's not really suited for. I smile and say, you must be the nicest person in the world. I think he's just an ego-tripping monster. I agree that he's a jerk, but could you do any better if you were the president? I'd never be foolish and arrogant enough to run for public office. Anyone who wants to be elected shouldn't be. In fact, they should be regarded as dangerous people. That's kind of extreme, isn't it? No more extreme than our current situation. So why are you even here? The guy beside me gives me a dirty look and tells us to shut up, nodding toward the microphone 50 feet in front of us, where a guy in a tropical shirt is tapping the microphone, trying to get people to stop making noise so the president can start making noise. I don't like the noise in my head right now. It's blocking me from making sense to myself, blocking me from answering Randy's question. I try to think clearly about her compassionate view of the president. It's certainly true that if I became president, I'd do a terrible job. And in that sense, he and I have something in common. I try to think of other similarities, things that he and I both like. But the only two things that come up are Oreo cream sandwiches and pornographic movies. I've heard that whenever he stays in a hotel, he insists on having huge amounts of junk food waiting in his room, including 48 family-sized packs of Oreos arranged on his bed in 6 rows of 8, not 8 rows of 6. I've also heard that he doesn't like being president because they won't let him watch porn in the Oval Office. There's something almost charming about the stupidity of the man's obsessions. But in all other ways, he just seems mean, self-absorbed, offensive, and sociopathic. The kind of guy you might meet in a bar who would stand too close to you, talk loudly in your face, not let you finish a single sentence, repeatedly jab your chest with a meaty index finger. It's true that if I were bumbling my way through a job I couldn't really do, I'd probably want lots of Oreos and pornography. She says, so tell me again, why are you even here? There's no doubt that he's just as bad as you think he is, but he's desperate for attention. People like you can't stop yourself from giving it to him. Yeah, he's a big baby who likes to throw his toys out of the crib just to piss you off. And you love to hate him so much, you're putting yourself, hey, whoa, I thought you were trying to be compassionate, but listen to yourself. You've got all his pathologies figured out. Aren't you trying to give him a chance? Well, I would start that way. But then the guy starts talking and I totally hate him. I came prepared this time. I'm going to make him lose track of what he's saying. He'll do that anyway. Yeah, but it'll be more fun if I make him do it. I like making arrogant guys lose their cool. This guy never had any cool to lose. The lights flash off and on again. The guy beside me tells me to shut the fuck up. I want to tell him to shut the fuck up, but there's no point in starting fights with a guy who looks like he likes to start fights. I review what I'm planning to say. I'm going to let the president get about 5 minutes into his speech, then stand up and fire off a series of carefully prepared condemnations, speaking loudly but calmly, trying to seem as intelligent and rational as possible, refusing to let him interrupt and talk over me, saying as much as I can before anyone can react and shut me up. I'll tell him he's a complete asshole for bloating the defense budget, eviscerating the already corrupt Environmental Protection Agency, planning to build a useless, expensive wall on the Mexican border, taking immigrant children from their families, giving tax breaks to the nation's richest people, pulling the US out of the Paris Climate Agreement without even reading it, escalating bombing raids on defenseless Middle Eastern countries. I'll go on for as long as I can before the security people subdue me. I catch Amy's eye and we share a secret smile, pleased that we're doing something to disrupt the deadly absurdity of 21st century America. I know it won't make any difference. I'll just be written off as a left-wing psycho, a potential terrorist. But at least I'll know I didn't just sit back and complain without taking action. Suddenly, there's loud, sexy music, and a 20-something blonde in a bikini bounces on stage, starts doing a suggestive dance, loudly chanting 306, 306, 306. The crowd picks up the chant, 306, 306, 306, doing sloppy imitations of bikini woman's seductive motions. The noise is brutal. 306, 306, 306. The number flashes red on TV screens in Gothic lettering. I'm not sure what the number means, but Randy leans against me and says, It's the number of electoral votes he got back in 2016. The crowd is to chant the number 306 306 times to greet the president. Otherwise, he won't speak. He's counting? Probably his assistants are. I can't imagine him doing it himself. The sound is hypnotic. 3 beats, 3 body motions, a brief pause, 3 beats, 3 body motions, a brief pause, 3 beats, 3 body motions, a brief pause. 306, 306, 306. I'm surrounded by people moving their bodies. Randy's trying to resist, arms folded across her chest, looking disgusted. It's hard not to move my own body, even though I know if I get caught in the rhythm, I'll be submitting to something I shouldn't give into, an undertow that can't be resisted once you're in its grip. Bikini Girl is straight from a TV game show, one of those blondes that assists the MC by bouncing around on stage without speaking, beaming at the prizes, cars and boats and appliances, trips to boring places. Just as the last 306 gets chanted, I hear another number. 3 million votes, 3 million votes, 3 million votes. I turn and see a gray-haired guy in the back chanting solo, dressed in fatigues and holding up a Vets for Peace poster. This time I don't need Randy to explain. It's the number of votes the president would have lost by in 2016, except the nation hasn't outgrown its dated election procedures. Bikini Girl stops dancing, glares, power walks to the back of the room, slaps the Vet for Peace hard, knocks out his dentures, tells him to shut the fuck up. He scrambles on his hands and knees to put his teeth back in his mouth. The crowd goes wild. The 306 chant returned full force, starting again from the number 1, this time with pumping fists and stomping feet. Finally, the president walks on stage, a beach ball in a suit he can't quite button. He puts on his meaty, self-satisfied smile in response to loud applause. He lifts his hands, palms facing us, signaling for silence, making a secret sign with his thumb and index finger, the other fingers pointing up to form a crude W, the white supremacy symbol. Suddenly, the TV monitor starts showing football games again, this time with the sound on. And I assume this is some kind of technical mistake that's going to get someone fired. But the president starts talking as if the football announcers' voices were parts of his speech. The TVs aren't quite loud enough to drown him out, but they're loud enough to make it hard to follow what he's saying. Of course, it's always hard to follow what he's saying because either he's too dumb to make sense or sees no reason to. But now it's like a deliberate attempt is being made to produce a psychotic condition. Beer and car commercials repeatedly interrupt the game, jingles and voiceover messages that blend seamlessly with the president's words, as if by design. 3 minutes later, the TVs blink off and the president goes silent. 30 seconds later, the TVs and the president start making noise again. This pattern repeats for the next 10 minutes. The auditorium lights flash off and on, a strobe effect that makes the president look like he's popping in and out of existence. Randy says, "Fuck this shit," stands and shouts, "Hey!" raising her hand like a student who wants to make sure she gets called on. He glares at her, snarling, "It's not time for questions yet." Randy snaps, "But I won't remember the question later. I have to ask as soon as the question pops into my mind." The president says, "Write it down, ask it later." I don't have any paper. My pen has run out of ink. He leers at her like a sleazy Southern sheriff and says, "Well, sucks to be you, doesn't it?" I notice Amy is holding up her phone. I assume she's making a video, since Randy looks like she might be staging a disruption similar to the one we've planned. Why not launch 2 viral videos? Randy takes a deep breath. "Here comes the question anyway, Mr. President. When you're making a customer service call and they put you on hold, there's always music playing, really bad music. Who made the decision to play this music? Why is it always so stupid? Why does it always sound like beer commercial music or failed top 40? It's an algorithmic decision." Algorithmic? Yeah, algorithmic. A decision no one's making? Right, we don't need anyone anymore. Who wrote the algorithm? No one. An algorithm wrote the algorithm? That's one way of putting it. Someone somewhere at some point must have written something down. You're thinking it dated. There's no human point of origin. That went out of fashion decades ago. It's cheaper without people. More money for motherfuckers like me, less money for motherfuckers like you. Got it? Not really, Mr. Not My President. The truth is that some really smart guy got paid to pick up a number 2 pencil and put numbers on a piece of lined paper. Or maybe it was graph paper, or maybe a legal pad, one of the yellow ones with perforations at the top. He wrote things down, crossed things out, had moments of confusion, moments of frustration, then moments of exhilarated understanding. He cleared his throat, scratched his balls, took off his glasses and put them back on, got up to pig out on a pack of Oreos, made himself sick, had to take 3 Tylenols and sit quietly to refocus himself, then took what he'd written on the page and typed it into a computer. We need to find this guy and others like him. They graduate from top universities. They get paid a lot of money. Without them, motherfuckers like you would be nothing. We need to put these people out of commission. I'm absolutely stunned. Normally, no one talking to the president gets to talk as long as Randy talked. I'm not at all surprised that he used the word motherfucker, but I'm amazed that she had the balls to repeat it and didn't get silenced and punished. The president sneers and says, but the fact remains, the Noid from MIT and Caltech didn't decide that when you're on a customer service call, you hear bad music. The algorithm decided. He was just the one writing it down, like someone dancing and speaking in tongues when the Holy Spirit takes over. That's a fucked up analogy. It's the math guy isn't the one who decides on the songs that get played. They don't get played, really. They're just there. And they always will be. There's no way back to what you think was a better time. It wasn't a better time. Back then, you had to correct your own spelling mistakes. I didn't make spelling mistakes. Bullshit. I really didn't. I always bullshit. Look at the last 4 digits of your social security number. We'll use them to dig up your digital past, the only past that exists anymore. There's an algorithm that helps us dig up your shit in no time at all. Then there's that word again, algorithm. Algorithm, like something you can dance to. We'll use it to prove you made spelling mistakes. It's instead of it's, which instead of which, here instead of here, bear instead of bear, sail instead of sail, wait instead of wait, whale instead of whale, pie instead of pie, pale instead of pale, lay instead of lied, laid instead of lane or lane, there instead of there and there, hair instead of hair, pair instead of pair, high instead of high, buy instead of buy. Horrible mistakes you were just too lazy to notice. We'll publish them on your Facebook page. We'll use them to ruin your credit score. We'll put you in camps for people with subprime credit ratings. Your life will totally suck and it won't get better. Do you really want to continue this conversation? The president makes the white supremacy sign and the crowd explodes. There are more high fives, pumping fists, and obscene hip movements in the next 30 seconds than there were in all the pro and college football games in 2018. I glance at Amy and notice her giving the president a dirty look. It's widely known that people get fired if they give him dirty looks. Amy can't really get fired, but she can certainly be punished. And I give her a subtle sign with my eyes, but she doesn't notice. The president does notice. He holds up his hands for silence. He glares at Amy and her phone, quickly nods toward Bikini Girl, who sashays across the stage, grabs Amy's phone and smashes it, then clamps her in a headlock and hauls her outside. It happened so fast that I'm not sure how to react. I want to call the police, but I know that would only make things worse. The police work for the man, the beach ball in the suit. Bikini Girl bounces back through the fire exit, hops onto the stage, does a high five with the president, who puts on his meaty, satisfied smile and says, "It's time to confront the future. And the future is space.com, which will ensure America's dominance in space is never questioned and seriously threatened. Because we know that the best way to prevent conflict is to prepare for victory. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Space is the next arena. It's obvious to everyone. It's all about space. Space. I like the way it melts in my mouth. It's a word I want to keep saying until it doesn't exist anymore." The president's beefy smile becomes angelic. Joining his hands in front of his paunch, swaying back and forth, gazing at the ceiling as if it were something more than a substitute sky, he says, "As Emperor of the Universe, I will soon be launching specially trained space warriors, intergalactic green berets, prepared to conquer infinity and beyond, to boldly go where no one has ever gone, to a place that won't exist until it's ours. For those who think they can harm the United States, to challenge us in the ultimate high ground of celestial combat, it's going to be a whole different ball game, and they won't even get to first base. Our future is one big slam dunk after another. Everyone else will have to run for cover. He pauses to let the syllables plant themselves in everyone's brain. Then he smiles like he's just about to consume a family-sized pack of double-stuffed golden Oreo cream sandwiches. It's not the meaty, self-satisfied smile he flashed when the speech began. It's the smile of someone whose teeth are getting sharper by the second. He finally says, "If I say that the 1% won't pay any taxes, the crowd of mostly working class people goes wild. If I make the W sign, the crowd goes wild." I know there's no time to lose. Within a few seconds, the crowd will erupt again. I'm on my feet. I take a deep breath. But now that Amy's gone, there won't be anyone recording my volley of insults. I'm not sure what to do. I freeze in place with my mouth half open. The president looks at me like I'm a tree that he needs to chop down. I try to look like I'm not a tree, that there aren't any trees anymore. I finally manage to say, "Can anyone here tell me what question I'm asking?" The president tries to look like an angry turtle. He points at me and shouts, "Silence that man. Fold him in half like a stick of juicy fruit gum." Or no, not juicy fruit, spearmint. Or no, not spearmint, doublemint. Or no, not doublemint, Bazooka Joe's. Ha, yeah, Bazooka Joe's. The kind with the cute little comics inside. Or no, not gum. That's a thing of the past. We need something you can eat. Fold him in half like a slab of uncooked bacon. Is there anyone here who doesn't like eating whole packs of uncooked bacon? Everyone looks amazed at the president's burst of inspiration, too stunned to react when I push my way to the aisle and dart into the bathroom. I know I've got only seconds to make my escape. I stand at a toilet and squeeze out through the window, then rush down the alleyway into a street of pedestrians. I try to look like a normal guy doing normal things. I walk like it's just another night and I'm out for a stroll. I yawn and smile and stroke my chin and look at my watch and put my hands in my pockets, pausing every few seconds to study the merchandise in the shop fronts. It feels like I should be pursued by huge unshaven guys with guns and mirror shades. But when I look back, I just see regular people. I keep walking, wondering about Amy, where they've taken her, the dangerous, mindless questions they're probably asking her, trying to break her down. Then I'm wondering why the president let Randy talk so long and bluntly challenge him. Normally, he only lets you get halfway through a sentence, then loudly talks over you, changing the subject. He gets mad if you try to return to what you were saying, cutting you off again quickly. So it's odd he didn't cut Randy off right away. Then it occurs to me, he probably let her talk because he liked the way she looks. The curves her body made in her form-fitting outfit. The president's misogyny is well known, one of the media's favorite subjects. Now I've seen it in action, but in a surprisingly subtle way. Across the street, a group of maybe 10 people, laughing and playfully pushing each other and talking loudly, apparently drunk, stops in front of a brownstone. One of them opens the door and they stumble inside. They're too drunk to notice or care when I join their party. I figure the president's hitmen won't think of searching a private home. Inside, we fill the two front rooms with loud conversation. Soon I'm sitting on a blue couch between two women who talk to me like they know me well, repeatedly calling me Bart or maybe Brett. Apparently, Bart or Brett used to work at the city zoo, but quit a few months ago because he couldn't stand seeing animals in cages any longer. Now he's part of a mystical cult whose arcane ceremonies involve the spirits of dead animals. Crows and wolves and dolphins are mentioned repeatedly and represent higher forms of intelligence. One of the women is tall and slender and has a necklace made of teeth. The other one has wavy blonde hair and a long iridescent gown. The shifts in colors begin to have a strange hypnotic effect. Soon I feel like I've been here for days, or that I grew up in this brownstone and it's my job to keep it in good condition. The responsibility soon becomes the main topic of conversation. Two men who suddenly don't seem drunk at all, start talking about renovations, inexpensive ways of making my brownstone as good as new. Then we're discussing budgets and building materials. The iridescent woman who gets called Nancy says that her cousin can get special custom work done for almost nothing, since he knows the right people. Everyone at the party agrees that it's crucial to know the right people. I'm feeling elated. Everything seems possible. I start talking to the construction guys, making definite plans, sharing contact information. In the background, Nancy and the necklace woman are whispering with an urgency that makes it seem that they were waiting for me to leave before they could have a real conversation. Nancy says, "So anyway, Jackie, here's how it works. All you have to do is get him to say his name backwards. Then he'll vanish into the phantom zone." Jackie says, "That's it? Really?" "Yeah, that's all it takes." "But what if he's got a name you can't say backwards, like Smith or Brown?" Doesn't have to be his exact name letter by letter. Even if it sounds like his name backwards, or has a syllable that sounds like his name backwards, it'll send him into the phantom zone. Really? So let's say his name is Rat. Tar is rat backwards. So if you get him to say guitar retarded, he'll vanish into the phantom zone? Yeah. I don't get it. Guitar and retarded are common words, and he's probably said them many times throughout his life. So why hasn't he disappeared already? I was confused about that too at first, but it turns out the answer is simple. It's the act of getting him to say it, tricking him into say it, that makes him disappear. I still don't get it. It's not about getting it. We're talking about magic, not logic. It's not scientific, not algorithmic. Neither is the phantom zone. It's not part of our scientific universe. Then what is it? It's whatever doesn't exist anymore, or never did and never will. He'll vanish without a trace? Without a trace. No one will even remember that he existed. Even I won't remember? No, you'll remember, since you'll be the one who got rid of him, but no one else will. I look over at them, and when they see me looking, they shut up and smile politely. I realize that they're not talking about the president. The person they're planning to eliminate might be a boss or spouse or boyfriend, but it's hard not to think about the president when magic is being discussed. Normally, I'd dismiss magic as just being a showbiz activity, tricks that certain people learn to perform on stage. But I'm thinking about it now as a way of understanding how the president got here and how to get rid of him. In a way, it's perfect. If people were thinking logically, the president would just be another spoiled blowhard who needs to get his ass kicked. But through the crudest forms of media magic, he fooled millions of people into voting for him. So maybe the way to get rid of him would be through a magical action. I want to ask Nancy where she found out about the phantom zone. Maybe she's a witch of some kind and has a network of supernatural connections and allies, just like Brett or Bart supposedly does. But the construction guys are talking to me earnestly, trying to share important information, and I don't want to be rude by seeming distracted. I meet their eyes and crease their brow and nod every 15 seconds. Jackie says, "Sounds like something from a comic book." Nancy says, "You want to get rid of him, right? I mean, you've been living with him for years and he's the worst boyfriend ever." "That's for sure. I got to get rid of him, but he won't let me break up with him. You remember how violent he got the last time I tried to leave? So what have you got to lose? Give it a try. Get him to say his name backwards. His name is Lee, right? So get him to say common words like steal, feel, real, or kneel. Like if Lee were the president, you could get him to start promoting his best-selling book, The Art of the Deal." Jackie's just about to say something, but in the next room, a TV comes on and I can hear the president's voice. It's loud and belligerent, mentioning Iran and Venezuela. They're identified as threats to our national security, obstacles to democracy, which means that we might need to start bombing them, a prospect that leads to maniacal cheering and shouting from the televised crowd. They're going wild, jumping up and down at the thought of people in Iran and Venezuela getting slaughtered. I feel sorry that I left Randy there by herself. Then I think of Amy, who might be in the phantom zone at this point. I wonder if there's any way to bring people back, a way to reverse the verbal magic. Then I realize it might be harder to bring Amy back if she's not in the phantom zone and just in custody somewhere, booked for trying to make the president think that she doesn't like him, sitting in a dingy holding cell somewhere, like the place where your car ends up when it gets towed away. a place where magic words won't work, and instead I'll have to hire lawyers, then resign myself to years of expensive bullshit. I suppose it shouldn't be surprising, considering how paranoid our social environment is, that Amy was arrested for making unpleasant eye contact with an insecure person. He's famous for firing people that don't stroke his ego, but maybe it was more than that. Maybe the wrong people knew that Amy knew too much. Maybe they were tracking her internet searches and knew that she knew the truth behind the space.com rant the president spewed out earlier. A program that will cost taxpayers trillions of dollars, mounting a search for interstellar enemies that probably only exist in action movies. Maybe there was spyware in her computer, and the wrong people heard what she told me about the more than human army being assembled in Area 51, genetic alterations, recombinations, producing weapons disguised as monsters, prepared to conquer the stars. Deadly virtual jellyfish with tentacles reaching beyond the most distant galaxies, infesting all of space-time with iridescent poisons. Cybernetic manatees with whiskers for lightning bolts for whiskers, rising from the Sargasso Sea like mermaids made of uranium, slashing through infinite space, cutting it into bite-sized pieces. Hippos larger than the Milky Way, squashing and infecting everything they touch, expanding like radioactive pancake batter. Pissed off, cross-eyed flatworms magnified billions of times and dividing, each piece becoming a whole new flatform in less than the blink of an eye. Heads on either end, each head spitting and burping and farting and shitting, expelling deadly gas that spreads at 100 times the speed of light. Gigantic viruses driven by nuclear fission, or maybe it's fusion, teeth like mushroom clouds, biting their way through constellations, making a zodiac droop like a failed erection, contaminating all the black holes in the universe. I'm sure I've got some of the details wrong. I always get the details wrong. Millions, billions, trillions, microseconds, nanoseconds, larger and larger and smaller, a blur of size and speed that's growing and shrinking in every direction. And now I can't get past the toxic noise coming out of the TV set. Turn that shit off, Nancy yells. One of the construction guys starts fumbling with the remote, thrusting it at the picture tube, but nothing happens. Jackie says, haven't you heard? It's now illegal to turn off TV sets when the president's speaking. The off button on the remote won't work. One of the men nods. Yeah, you're right, Jackie. I've heard that if you turn it off by unplugging it, you get fined and put it on a list. I say, we're probably all on lists of some kind anyway. Nancy says, so I'm never turning on my TV again. Jackie says, I think they can turn themselves on by themselves. A man in front of the TV nods and points to the screen. This one just did. Another man says, are you allowed to turn down the volume so you can ignore it and do something else? The guy with the remote says, I've been trying to, but it seems to be stuck on high volume, just like the president himself. I say, once the TV's on, can they tell you're really watching? Nancy says, they? Who's they? I say, whoever it is that wants to know what you're doing, the ones who write and use the algorithms that blow up your phone with commercials. She says, yeah, but who are they? What good does it do them to know what you're doing? What kind of person would want a job like that? Jackie says, remember the nerd from your high school calculus class, the one who went to MIT or Caltech and got recruited by Apple or Microsoft? He's the kind of person who wants a job like that. He gets more money in a year than you and I make in a lifetime, and no one he works with can even remember his name. Nancy shakes her head and says, but how can they tell if you're watching and if you're really paying attention? I mean, can't you just pretend to pay attention? I say, sure. But think of how much pretending you'd have to do. It couldn't be good for you. Plus, I'll bet that within a year you'll have to prove that you were paying attention. Nancy says, how? What would count as proof? A man says, they'll make you take notes and turn in the notes at the end of each day or week or month or whatever. And people will resist because the whole process of collecting and checking the notes will create new jobs and studies will appear showing that the economy has never been better. Nancy says, yeah. But the TV enforcement workers will probably only get minimum wage and no health benefits or vacation time. Think of the security clearance those jobs will require. There's a knock at the door. I want to think it's people joining the party, but I'm pretty sure it means danger, guys with guns and mirror shades. I know it's time to leave. I find the bathroom and slip out through the window into an alley, then move carefully onto a side street. I walk for maybe 10 minutes, past rows of brownstones that look just like the one I left. Again, I control myself carefully, making sure that I don't look like someone being chased by dangerous people. I'm becoming convinced that if you act like you're not being chased, then you're not being chased. I walk onto a larger commercial street, back toward the rally, back toward the confrontation I tried to run away from. TVs broadcast the president's football face from every shop. He's like some ghostly presence haunting the unreality that's created him, as if we were all in the phantom zone already, a place where things no longer exist, a place where we can't remember what it meant for things to exist. I look away but keep coming back to the fast face in the shop fronts. I can't hear what he's saying since the sound is trapped behind the windows, and for all I know, the sound might not be on. But there's no need to know what he's saying since he's not saying anything. He's just bellowing, and the camera repeatedly shifts to the audience, jumping up and down like people on TV game shows. I can see "Don't Tread on Me" in the 10th row making a white supremacy sign. And 2 seats to his left, Randy is glaring, like someone who wants to flip someone off but knows it might be dangerous. I keep walking, watching the depth of the street reflected in the shopfront glass, watching for the president's hitmen, listening for steps approaching behind me. But there's nothing. Apparently, I've given them the slip. Then I see the large brick structure, the school auditorium, and the noise and light of the rally bursting through the open front door. But security guards block my path, protecting the entrance. Their hands are on their guns. They're just about to ask hostile questions. But I flash the white supremacy signs and their eyes light up with pleasure. They nod and stand aside and don't ask me anything. When I enter, the president is so caught up in the noise he's making that he doesn't even seem to notice me. The TVs are going berserk. The word "touchdown" flashes on and off in red Gothic lettering. I sit back down beside Randy. She whispers, "Where were you?" It's hard to explain. Why did you come back? I still have to do what I came here to do. I know I should probably cut my losses. It's too dangerous to shout insults in a situation like this. If the mob gets violent, no one will stop them from tearing me to pieces. In fact, the security people will probably be pleased that the mob is doing their job for them. But I'm still convinced that I can rely on the element of surprise. When I tell the president what a dangerous fuck he is, everyone will be too shocked to react at first. And I already know I can escape once I'm out on the street, since I've already done so. But then I remember Amy's gone. And without the viral video she was planning, a crucial part of the project will be missing. It's true that the room is filled with TV cameras recording everything, but they're focused on the president, and Amy was planning to make my subversive tirade the center of attention, knowing it would reach millions of people on the net, not reduced to a 1-minute clip on network news buffered by commercials. We're counting on copycat responses, thousands of people assaulting the president with vicious insults everywhere he went, making viral videos that would take huge amounts of virtual space. I turn to Randy and whisper, "I need a favor. I need you to take my phone and make a video." "Of what?" "You'll see." I slide the phone slowly out of my pocket, concealing it in the palm of my hand. I slip it into her hand. She whispers, "Right now?" "Right now." I start to speak, but the president seems to wake up from a trance, glances in a panic around the room, jerking his head like a huge psychotic duck, then looks like he's got things figured out. He makes the white supremacy sign and the crowd explodes. "Don't Tread on Me" leans back and beats his chest like Tarzan. Bikini Woman starts doing jumping jacks. Randy drops my phone and I hear the screen crack. She looks at me with a stunned expression. It's a face I've seen 1,000 times in 1,000 different places. A face that can't believe that something bad has really happened, something that can't be fixed at just the moment when it's most needed. She looks like a combination of Nancy and Jackie. And I remember what they said about the Phantom Zone, which sounded ridiculous. But now I'm so disgusted, I'll try anything. I need to get the president to say part, the reverse of his name, trap. It shouldn't be too hard. Part is a common word. It's part of so many sentences, and everything is part of something else. I wait 15 minutes for the crowd to get quiet enough. Then I shout, "Mr. President, what part of this sentence am I leaving out?" He bellows back, "The second part comes before the first, but the second part doesn't exist yet." At first, nothing happens, except that he seems to be frozen in place, a snapshot of himself. He trembles for less than a second, then pops loudly out of existence, as if he were made of a billion microscopic party balloons. The crowd stands there, not sure what to do or think. Not sure if they should be disturbed or entertained by what looks like a magic trick. There's a heap of orange dust beside the podium. I know I've got no time to lose. I've got to get the mob worked up again so they don't connect me with the president's disappearance. I rush to the aisle and up to the podium, smile and wink at Bikini Girl and face the crowd with the victory sign. They think it's the white supremacy sign. They blitz the room with noise, replacing trap with all the noise that's not coming out of his trap anymore. I know that by the time the cheering stops, they won't even know who the president was or that he ever existed. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Stephen Paul. That was such a great reading. And if you want to unmute yourself and actually clap, we can hear some noise. We wouldn't mind it. I think it deserves it.
Thank you. Great to have you all here.
Wow. Well, I mean, I feel like Stephen Paul, I had a similar reaction when I read it on the page, is that I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but also that my face is kind of hurting from laughing. And just with your reading of it and with the voices, it made it jump off the page. And I can definitely see why you wanted to reserve this specific date to share the story with everyone. So we're gonna launch into a little Q&A now. We have some time for questions. And so feel free if you wanna like put up your little hand raise icon so I can see if you have a question. You can also put one into the chat if you'd like. But maybe if I can start us off just with something that I've decided I'm gonna ask each of our featured authors for the semester, this question to get us going, Stephen Paul. So you're gonna be subjected to it as well. I'm wondering if you could tell us if in any way this dumpster fire of a year, 2020, has impacted your writing or your aesthetic or just kind of your thinking about approaching the page or approaching your art.
Yeah, well, it definitely has. I would say, first of all, that the idea that you have to confront the official version of the facts with an alternate version, and an alternate version that isn't just fake news, is really crucial. I think we know that the version of reality we receive is a journalistic construction, a media construction. And the current administration, of course, has problematized that even further by trying to reinvent the reality themselves. So my feeling is with fiction, which is always a reconstruction of reality, but makes no claim to be the truth, we have a crucial opportunity to maintain our sanity. And some of the stories in the collection 2020 deal more specifically with events in 2020, like the George Floyd murder, the Black Lives Matter movement, that hideous photo opportunity on in early June that Trump created, obviously COVID-19 and all the misinformation about that. So Yeah, I think this year, as you said, what did you call it? A dumpster fire? What was the rest of it?
Oh, I just said dumpster fire. There, I'm sure there's a lot of other terms we can use to describe.
Yeah, and it just seems to me, horrified as I've been by everything that happens, my way of dealing with it is by writing fiction. Um, Keeps my sanity. It allows me to confront what's happening with an aesthetic product. And I think the work that's involved in creating an aesthetic product is an act of political resistance. Um, and a necessary part just of my own psychological well-being.
Well,
So
oh, I was just going to say it's interesting to kind of hear the different responses and how it's affected our art in different ways, and so I think it's particularly evocative that it seems like it's inspired you maybe even more, and kind of that form of catharsis, but also just that form of necessity, right? And maybe the ways in which we can engage in these moments and kind of make our thoughts known through our art.
yeah, I think it's really crucial because we're getting not just fake news from the White House, but just all sorts of distortions from the mainstream media. And if we don't have a better language than they do, I think we're just going to have the terms of reality dictated to us. So I see it as a form of aesthetic resistance.
Well, thank you. So let's segue into some of our questions from participants, students, guests. What do we want to know from Stephen Paul Martin? And remember, you can throw a question in the chat, or you can use the little hand raise function.
Let me get the chat going here because
Oh, there's some great comments in the chat.
okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, great. So wish fulfillment, so therapeutic. Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you what, I want to deal with that one. Sandy Robinson's wish fulfillment, so therapeutic. The way I see it, in some ancient societies, they had magical ceremonies where they created a simulacrum. And the idea was to eliminate something by destroying the simulacrum. The assumption was if you destroy the simulacrum, you can destroy the real thing that the simulacrum refers to. And so I think in this case, trap was the simulacrum, and you know who was the thing that needs to be removed. So as I see it, it was a sort of an attempt at a magical act, even though, I don't believe in magic in the same way that people in those cultures did who practiced that activity. I think I just wanted to come up with my own artistic version of it.
Right, or even a sense of a revenge fantasy.
Yeah, for sure. Form of escapism from Nirvan Valencia. I don't think I know you, Nirvan.
One of my students, yes.
Okay, great. Form of escapism. Escapism means that I'm hiding from reality, right? Is that more or less what you meant?
Or maybe departing briefly from reality.
Well, yeah, I think there's a tendency to need to back off from the manufactured reality that's coming at us at the speed of bullshit. And I see fiction, if it's good, as a way of engaging with reality more deeply and in a more personal way. The media is giving you a non-personal vision of reality that basically amounts to a form of capitalist propaganda. And my feeling is that we have to have our own versions of things. And those versions of things need to come from a deeper engagement with reality. So no, I wouldn't say it's escapism at all. At least I don't think of it that way. I'd think less of myself if I did. Angie, I know.
Oh, we have a hand raised from Stacy Johnson. So Stacy, do you want to ask a question?
Oh, I do. Professor Martin, I was wondering if you might talk about your process with this story. You mentioned that it came into being in 2018. I was wondering about the moment when you knew it was a story, and then how long it was in gestation and what you were observing as that was going on, and when you finished it, if you could.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think I'm totally finished with it yet. So there were certain revisions I made even right before the reading, and I'll probably keep working on it until the book is published. But the gestation here was, I saw a Trump rally. My wife loves to watch them because she thinks they're really good unintentional comic relief. And I thought so. I thought the same thing. And I just thought, man, I can have so much fun with this, and so much angry fun. And so it was 30 pages at one point. Hal Jaffe wanted it for the algorithmic issue of Fiction International, which is why that word algorithm keeps coming up. It was 30 pages. I cut it down to about 18. The chase scene was originally much longer, and it involved a number of detours that I just decided to cut them out and save them for a different story, which is something I tell students of mine all the time, that sometimes you just have to whittle out some of the parts of your story, even if you love them, and really keep only what actually matters. So it's almost finished now, Stacy. I think for me, 2 or 3 years is a normal time frame for one of my stories. Sometimes I get lucky and it just comes out. I pretty much like it without endless tinkering. But I know you're a tinkerer too, and I support you for that. You're a wonderful prose writer, and you get the results that come from effectively engaging yourself with the process of revision.
That's very inspiring. Thank you, Professor Martin.
Sure, thanks for coming. It's good to see you.
All right, we have a question in the chat from Brett. Hey, Brett. He says, how's writing about this moment different than writing about other periods? You lived through the AIDS struggle in New York and wrote about historical eras of war and corruption. Does this moment feel different to you as you write fiction, or is it the media landscape that makes it feel different?
Oh, wow. What an awesome question, Brett. Thank you. Yeah. Really, I'd have to think about that for a couple days, but I'll just give a quick answer to that now. Yeah, he's referring to stories that I wrote about the Gulf War in 1990, and which was in so many ways similar to what we're going through now. But the invasive power of the media back then it was very powerful back then, but it wasn't as powerful as it is now. You had a president, George H.W. Bush, who was making up his own fake news, although he didn't dare to call it that. Of course, he was the former head of the CIA, so he was used to making up fake news and practicing all sorts of invasive techniques. But yeah, I think there's an urgency to it now that's even scarier than it was in the 1990s. I wrote a story also in 1992, I think it was, about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis back in 1962. And in that case, it was just reality that was scary. The media was nothing compared to what it is now, even though it got Kennedy elected. But just that thought of, that confrontation and what was going to happen there. This would be going back to the earlier question. That was definitely a time when I wanted some sort of escape, but I didn't know how to write about it. So 30 years later, I finally found the story I needed to write. And it was fun because, of course, there was, I had Kennedy as a character, Khrushchev as a character, Bobby Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, all sorts of mythic figures already that I was able to research. And I know, Brett, this is true for you too. The research is a huge part of the fun of this, just learning all sorts of new things and then figuring out how to convert it into the kind of fiction that people like us write.
All right. Thank you for the question, Brett. Maybe we could follow up. There's a question from Keith. Hey, Keith, who says, at what point did you realize the characters would utilize words themselves as a form of magic, or in this case, aesthetic resistance, within the context of the story's fantastical plot?
Okay, let me read that again. At what point did you realize the characters would utilize words themselves as a form of magic, or in this case, aesthetic resistance, within the context of the story's fantastical plot? Okay, man, that's another good question. And again, I know Keith is working on similar aesthetic problems in his own Fuka Road novel, which is a book he's doing for the manuscript class. And the characters themselves taught me what they wanted to say. It was really a case of, I don't know, maybe did I make Trap seem too smart? No, probably not. But he was a fun guy to write because you know, Trump himself is a fun guy to listen to if he weren't real. And there's something about the way he talks. I know I'm going off on a tangent, Keith, but humor me. Trump talks like he's some guy you meet in a bar and you're just going to get good and drunk with him. The irony is that you're not going to find Trump in the kind of bar that a lot of his voters would go to. So that's an incredible illusion that Trump was able to create, that he was just one of the guys and that he was a worker just like the rest of us and he was going to bring the jobs back, when he didn't have a clue about how to do that. And I don't think he ever meant it. But he was able to, you know, that way of talking that I was doing, that kind of thing where he sounds like a guy you're meeting in a bar. And I think that's a form of magic, that there's a way in which language can shape consciousness. And we have to be really careful about that, I think. And those of us who work with language, we know the magic power of the words we're using. And, but also as readers, I think that's the reason why immersion in the text has to also be accompanied by critical distance from it. Because becoming immersed in the language of power is like mental suicide.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
There you go. Absolutely.
Well, on the topic of kind of readers, right? Anastasios has a great question in the chat as well. It goes without saying that The Phantom Zone, on top of being very humorous, is also a very political story, and one which critics of President Trump being in the intended audience. That being said, did you also want Trump supporters to read it? And if so, what message, if any, did you intend for them?
The message was, hey, wake up, you guys. This guy doesn't give a shit about you. He gives a shit about himself, and that's it. You guys are just votes for him and people to give him attention. So that's what I wanted the Trump voters to get out of this text. I've realized that probably a lot of them would just be offended by the text, would tell me I'm a piece of shit for not being patriotic enough. But I challenge them to challenge me on the level of patriotism. I don't think patriotism just means giving into your government. I think patriotism means critically participating in government. And if democracy means anything, that's what it means. So yeah, that's a good question, Anastasios. I mean, I think if a Trump supporter read that, I'd hope he'd get the message that I just delivered. I don't want to simplify too much because I personally am not a Trump supporter. I have a brother who's a Trump supporter, okay? And I love my brother dearly. We're really close. We love watching monster movies together. But he's a Trump supporter. And I wouldn't reduce him to the status of some idiot who's just being seduced by the language of power. You know, that's a hard thing for me to say, considering this is a guy I grew up with. But I think there's a level of critical distance, which I'd hope even a Trump supporter might want. Now, look, let's not, Trump supporters are also the one percenters. And I think that's a whole different question. They have different reasons for voting for Trump than working class people who are just hoping he'd bring their jobs back. So I think you really have to take those as two different factions. The one percenters are a smaller group of people, but they have more power. And without them, Trump would be nowhere. Diana, was the Phantom Zone a reference to the Superman comic? Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great, Dan. I'm glad you knew that. Far out. There was a character in the old Superman comics, Mr. Mixelplicklick or something like that. It was an unpronounceable name. And that's actually where I got this idea of the Phantom Zone from. So don't tell DC Comics. And I'm going to tell you another story about a thing I had with DC Comics one time. But yeah, the Phantom Zone is definitely a reference to the Superman comics. And if you got Mr. Mixelplicklick, he was sort of a trickster. And he was always messing up Superman and Jimmy Olsen and all the other characters. And if you got him to say his name backwards, he went into the Phantom Zone. So that's a direct ripoff on my part. I liked what T.S. Eliot said, you know, good poets imitate, bad poets imitate, good poets steal. And I have no trouble stealing stuff if I'm going to put my own personal spin on it, which I think I did. Back in 1990, I wrote a story using the characters from Superman comics as my characters. And the Village Voice bought a copy of the story and they were all set to publish it. And someone told them, look, you guys are going to get sued seriously if you publish a story that uses the DC Comics cultural property. So then I had to get a lawyer. I was lucky to find one who only charged me $200 an hour. And he said, you can publish this provided you don't use any visual imagery. But at that point, the Village Voice had already pulled out of the deal. And fortunately, I found some alternative press publishers who were eager to publish it, but they wanted to put Superman pictures right on the cover. And I said, no. I explained the whole legal issue there. Superman comics, DC Comics is extremely litigious, and they don't mind coming after people and ruining them. So I was taking a risk, but so far they haven't come after me. And this was 30 years ago. So I think I'm safe.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody. You know.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, everybody listening live on Facebook, don't say anything. How about some other questions? What other questions? Robert. Hey, Robert.
Hi.
Hey,
how's it going?
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
How you doing? Good to see you. Hey, this is kind of a bullshit question, but who would you elect as president of literature?
That's really great. Maybe Borges. Yeah, probably Borges. I'll tell you who I'd elect president of the United States is the Green Party. If you want to see an incredible presidential platform, read the Green Party platform. Howie Hawkins, Angela Carter, yeah. Their platform is cut the military budget by 75%, free healthcare, free amnesty from student loans.
Free weed.
Free weed, absolutely. Well, yeah, they're big on that, sure. They think it's medicinal, and it probably is. But yeah, I that's it. But president of literature, Borges has always been my favorite. How about you? Who would you elect as the president of literature?
I'd elect you, Professor Martin.
Right.
You're my president.
Well, I've never had anybody try to nominate me for an office like that. So
Only if I could be chief of staff.
You got it, man. We'll have to get together and arrange this.
I'd support that ticket.
No, but seriously, I got to tell you, I know I shouldn't be campaigning here, but I should be actually. The Green Party, they don't have a chance to get elected, but that's who I'm voting for. I don't think of Biden as a serious alternative to Trump at all. I think he's part of the same My wife calls them the donor party, sort of a pun on Donner Party, that they're just people who are basically serving their donors. They don't really care about the average person. Biden probably a little more because he came from a working class background. But April's talking about me going off on tangents, so maybe
Yeah,
I better stop.
wants more. And she
Oh,
wants
do
you
you
to
want
find
more?
a sexier name for the Green Party.
A sexier name for the Green Party. That'd be great. A T12 with a Big Mac. I like that. Wow. Yeah, well, the Green Party, yeah, that is, I don't know. I kind of like it. If somebody else come up with a sexier name for the Green Party,
The
the Mo
Cerulean
Party.
Marijuana crats.
The Marijuana-crats. There we go. Very good. Yeah, they could have more fun with their name. Will we really need magic to get rid of Trump for real? Good question. I mean, I'm not taking any chances. I figure we should do the magic, and then if we don't need it, okay, no big deal. I have to tell you, I'm really terrified that he's going to do some evil thing right at the last minute. It just, you know, maybe leak something about Biden, and the whole thing will fall apart. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Magic or guns? Whoa, vote early. Yeah, I've already voted, Nelly. I don't know if you approve of the people I voted for, but I voted a couple days ago. Sandy, what do you mean by magic or guns?
I mean, it used to be that you could get rid of, you know, if you had the military or you could have a coup or something. If the magic doesn't work, is the only thing we have left is to everybody go get a gun. Of course, the people who have the guns are on the side of Trump, so that's a problem.
Well, I have to tell you, Sandy, my most recent work is called The Ace of Lightning, and that's about the assassin who shot the Archduke Ferdinand in 1914, and that was used as an excuse by the European superpowers to start World War I. So I'm sympathetic to people who I don't like guns, and I would never even own a gun. But you know, some person who's willing to do what my narrator in the story isn't willing to do. He's not willing to really take a radical step. So he's just going to do a kind of substitute thing, and this whole magic thing just falls into his lap because of this, you know, trip to a party that he takes. But yeah, I admire people who can really do that. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald, and this may not be the most popular thing to say, but he felt that United States was a capitalist power that was ripping people off. And he wasn't really after Kennedy, he was after capitalism, and Kennedy just happened to be in the way. So, you know, I have a respect for people who are willing to basically sacrifice themselves to confront tyranny. It does depend on us. So Anthony, that's my answer to your question.
So both, a little bit of both.
So let me answer Vanessa's question here. Can you dive into the significance of why it was so important to capture the confrontation on video? Was it a reflection on how saturated the news has been with social media? Was the camera a representation of something sinister or empowering? Woo, good question. Yeah, well, here they were trying to use it as something empowering. You know, if the event of somebody challenging the president was on the news, it'd be a 30-second clip surrounded by stupid commercials. Newscasters would be smiling and making their little talk. The whole thing would be trivialized. So the idea of using social media or yeah, YouTube, look, I mean, that's a utopian gesture, Vanessa. I think YouTube right now is contaminated by ads up and down the line. There may have been a time when YouTube, the internet in general, wasn't completely taken over by capitalism, but I think it's pretty close to that now. So I think my characters would have to come up with something different in 2020.
So Stephen Paul, we have a hand up from Jaime, a student in my Living Writers class.
Jaime, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, just wanted to say really great read.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was that the story for me felt like it was like a fervor dream, and I'm not sure if it was intentional, but with the protagonist, the dream ended when he made Trump say his name backwards, escaping the dream, while the supporters themselves are still stuck in this dream, sort of in an endless loop. Was this intentional, or is this sort of like something that just naturally occurred as the story progressed?
Okay. First of all, yeah, I think when language defamiliarizes reality, when you're using language to transform reality, then a certain kind of dream is happening. So I would accept that word dream in that sense, that you almost can't avoid it when language is used in a certain way. And certainly all your poets here know all about that. But repeat the second half of the question about the loop and the narrator freeing himself through the magical action about the loop. Repeat that for me, Jaime. I didn't quite follow that.
Yeah, it's like a fervor dream. It's almost like the succession of events that occur from the rally to the house, then back to the rally, and then the actual conversation between the protagonist and Trump, and then where he's stuck in the dream as well, maybe as all of us as unwilling participants, but finds a way out while the rest, the supporters of him, the MAGA people, are still stuck in this dream, this fictional place that they rather sleep in. And
Well,
if that's somewhat of like more of something of intentionally, or it sort of just naturally occurred.
well, okay. You know what? My maybe I didn't make this clear enough, so I'm glad you're saying it. My idea was that they're not even going to remember that he existed. Remember, the rule is that if once you make the guy go into the phantom zone, no one remembers that he ever existed except the person who made him go into the phantom zone. That, by the way, is not from Superman comics. That part of it's my own invention. So I think if you're following the logic of the story, they won't even remember that he existed. They'll look at the pile of orange dust beside the podium and they'll just think somebody better sweep it up. And this obviously is crazy. Of course, they'll all remember that he existed, but in the fiction, no. This is a kind of radical magic that goes eliminates from historical memory that which should be disappeared. But the story itself is there to tell this, deliver the lesson. Who spilled the tang? Yeah, there you go. That's probably what the people who sweep it up are going to think. Wonder though, here's the deal here. If you mix the tang in water, you recreate the president. Because that's what you do with tang, right? It's a powder and you mix it up and stir it up, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, I think, yeah. It's like Kool-Aid. You could get it in the liquid form back in the day, but it was mostly common in powder form.
Right. That's what I thought. So yeah, he's right. If you mix it in the tang, you probably have the president functioning again. Isn't this what's happening with Mitt Romney right now? He doesn't understand he's in the zone. April, expand on that a little bit. What about Mitt Romney?
I don't even know if my, hold on, let me find does my microphone work? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, you're fine.
no, my friend was sitting here the other day and she has no idea who anyone is in politics. And she's talking about playing Frisbee on the beach. And she had some political issue she's talking about. And the other guy, who's just a random guy on the beach she's playing Frisbee with, he says, why don't you ask him, Mitt Romney, who's just sitting in a chair 3 feet away, like the prior Republican nominee for president? And my friend says, who is Mitt Romney? And I'm like, this is how fast these guys get swallowed up. He was just on the ticket. Like no one has any idea. And he keeps making these big stands. He's just amazing to me because, in Utah, there was a prophecy about Mitt Romney that he would save the presidency. So in the same way that there's this prophecy sort of with the base and Trump and this weird thing happening with him, that already happened with Mitt Romney in Salt Lake City. So it's weird and sort of fun and strange to see the same thing writ large.
That's great. Very bizarre. Yeah. I mean, there was sort of an attempt to resurrect people like George Bush and Mitt Romney because they seem like they're better than Trump. But I just want to go on record as saying George Bush was not better than Trump. George Bush is a war criminal, and he never should have been allowed to leave Washington a free man. Okay, so.
All right. Okay. Well, I know we might soon be turning into Zoom pumpkins, but I'm wondering if maybe we can conclude this wonderful session with some comforting advice from you, Stephen Paul. So no matter, how we feel about the elections or who we're voting for, how can we steel ourselves for next week? How do we prepare ourselves? What do we do? Please help us.
I'd say do the best things that you enjoy about your life and don't let mainstream reality swerve you from that. We all will outlast whatever kind of brain dead regime takes over. Again, Biden will probably, I would prefer Biden to Trump for sure, and I hope he wins, but he's not an answer. He's part of the Capitalist Party too, and he's paid off by the same people Trump is paid off by. So I would say, hope for the best, but stay in touch with what works for you best in terms of giving your life meaning. Because whatever happens in the election, they can't stop you from continuing to make your lives meaningful in whatever specific ways that you do that.
I feel better already. Thank you, Stephen Paul, so much. Let's give Stephen Paul a round of applause for the reading, the advice.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Such a generous responses. We so appreciate you. And thank you all for joining us. Be safe this weekend. Be safe next week. Enjoy decorative gourd season. And we will hopefully see you back November 18th for our next Living Writers event. Get home safely. Don't trip in your chair on the way out the door.
Thanks a lot, Megan.
Thanks again. All right. Thank you so much, Stephen Paul. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Martin.
Thank you.
Love you.